I want to call to order the November 6, 2014 meeting of the Ascension Parish Council. Would everyone please rise for the invocation being given by Councilman Lord, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, as we gather here tonight, after the recent election across this country, we just thank you for the blessings that we are fortunate enough to live in the greatest country on earth, and for that cherished privilege to vote. And we also, in advance of Veterans Day, are extremely thankful for all those who gave their lives to this country and who served in our armed forces in any way and are serving now so that we may have that right. And we just ask that you bless them and keep them safe and return them home. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chris. Roll call, Madam Secretary. Please note that Councilman Melanson and Councilman Dempsey Lambert are absent. I have no chair's additions, but on a time restraint, I'd like to move agenda item number 8 to number 7 and number 7 to number 8.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
A motion by Mr. Todd Lambert.
Second.
A second by Mr. Johnson. Any opposition? Motion carries. So be it. Public comment period. Anyone wishing to speak on an agenda item, please sign in with the secretary, and you'll be given time when that item comes up. Parish President's report, Mr. Martinez.
Only two things I want to talk about is that we do have a Veterans Parade Sunday in Gonzales at 2 o'clock. I'd like to invite and encourage the public to get out and support our veterans, because without them we wouldn't be here today doing what we're doing. And also on Veterans Day, there's a ceremony at 11 o'clock at Veterans Park in Gonzales. Oliver, are you aware of anything on the West Bank? Veterans Day? Okay. So I'll encourage you to go out too and support the veterans that day. So that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on to agenda item number 6, the consent agenda.
Motion to adopt the consent agenda.
A motion by Mr. Lord, second by Ms. Cazzo. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passed. We'll move to agenda item number 7. Notice of cancellation of, regarding ad valorem tax, Mr. Dugas. And before you get started, Malcolm, please, Madam Secretary, please note that Mr. Melanson is here.
Good evening, members of the council. Pursuant to Louisiana Revised Statute 42:19.1, this is notice of consideration of action regarding ad valorem tax. Notice is hereby given that the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, will meet on Thursday, December 18, 2014, at 6 p.m. in the council meeting room, Courthouse Annex, 828 South Irma Boulevard, 2nd floor, Gonzales, Louisiana, at which time there will be a consideration of action regarding levy and collection of an ad valorem tax dedicated to the acquiring, constructing, improving, maintaining, and/or operating recreational facilities and activities in and for the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana. This action is contingent upon the favorable passage of the proposition at the election on December 4th, 2014.
Thank you, sir. There's no vote on this. We'll move on to agenda item number 8, which is now the condemnation proceedings. A is 35-197 River Road, Donaldsonville. We have somebody representing the parish on this? Yes, Ricky?
Yes, sir. We have 2 properties that have gone through the process of being notified, and we're looking for direction from this council on how to proceed.
Motion to move forward with recommendation from planning building officials.
We have a motion by Mr. Todd Lambert.
Second.
Second by Mr. Chris Lord. Any discussion?
Question. Do we need to do them individually, O'Neill, or?
Yes.
Okay, so we're doing this on the first one, River Road? Okay.
Any more discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. We move on to condemnation proceedings, Loop 945 at Latino Drive, Extension, Donaldsonville.
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Terry Cazzo, second by Mr. Benny Johnson. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. We move on to agenda item number 9, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, DPW Building Project, City of Donaldsonville, substantial completion. Ms. Martha Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. The Donaldsonville DPW building is complete. We have a few things on the punch list that will be, is going to be addressed, so we're here tonight to ask your approval to authorize President Martinez to sign the substantial completion pending the punch list.
Motion
city
by
of
Ms. Kent
Donaldsonville.
Snyder.
I'm sorry, did I say that? What? Oh, I'm sorry. This is the CDBG project for the City of Donaldsonville DPW building.
Right. Motion by Mr. Kent Shake Snyder, second by Mr. Oliver Joseph. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes.
Thank you.
We'll move on to planning and zoning recommendations. Agenda item number 10, zoning review ID 2459.14, located on the north and south side of LA Highway 1, north approximately 4,700 feet east of LA 405, to amend Ascension Parish zoning map from light industrial to medium industrial, residential, and commercial, and conservation to high industrial for Souvenir Incorporated.
Motion to accept.
I think that we have a recommendation from planning and zoning to accept.
Make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Todd Lambert.
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Benny Johnson. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. We'll move on to introduction of ordinances to revoke the 19 feet, to revoke the existing 19-foot servitude running along the east line of Lot 1A1 and the existing 12-foot utility servitude running along the west line of Lot 1A1 of the Shafter P. Kling Jr. property.
Motion introduced.
We have a motion introduced by Mr. Johnson,
I'll
second by
second
Mr.
that.
Todd Lambert. Motion is introduced. Introduction of ordinance to revoke the existing 19-foot servitude along the west line of Lot 2A1 of Linda F. Day property.
Motion to introduce.
Motion by
Mr.
Mr. Todd Lambert. Second by Mr. Brian Malonson. Is introduced. We'll move along to our public hearing ordinances. Reading of ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from conservation and medium industrial to mixed-use corridors for lots 3 to 9, Homeless Landing subdivision for Burnside Plantation LLC located on the north side of LA 44. Go ahead.
This ordinance amends the official zoning designation of lots 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 from conservation to mixed-use corridors. This rezone is identified as zoning review ID 2451.14, lots 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, Homeless Landing subdivision, whereas Ascension Parish local government subdivision is defined by Article 6 of Section 44 Louisiana Constitution 1974. Whereas the Parish of Ascension is the governing responsible body of the zoning and regulations within the jurisdiction. Whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish adopted May 4, 1993 identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of this parish. Whereas the official zoning map of Ascension Parish was last adopted March 10, 2014. Whereas the Parish Council reserves the authority to make changes to the official zoning map by ordinance. Whereas the request has been processed and compliant with procedures set forth, be it ordained the Ascension Parish governing authority that the official zoning map of the Ascension Parish, Louisiana is amended to reflect the proper identified as Exhibit A as mixed-use corridors as the official zoning designation. In the event any portion of this ordinance ever held to be invalid, unconstitutional for any reason by any court of common jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed separate, distinct, independent provisions, shall not affect the validity of remaining portions of the ordinance. The effect that this ordinance shall be in full effect is permitted by law. The exhibits are the legal description, the plat map, aerial/zoning map. This ordinance has been submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Motion to open public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion by Mr. Todd Lambert, open public hearing.
Second.
Second by Ms. Cazzo. Open.
Motion to close.
Motion to close public hearing. Motion to close by Mr. Todd Lambert, second by Mr. Kent Shake Snyder. Close. Would entertain a motion on ordinance. Move the ordinance.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kent Shake Snyder, move the ordinance, second by Mr. Chris Lord. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. We move to agenda item number 16, reading of ordinance, revision to the zoning map, mobile home park and RV park zoning designation.
The purpose of this ordinance is to add a new zoning designation, MHRV, to the Ascension Parish zoning map. Whereas Ascension Parish is a local government subdivision defined by Article 6 of the Section 44 Louisiana Constitution 1974. Whereas the Parish of Ascension is the governing responsible body within the jurisdiction. Whereas Article 6 of the Home Group Charter of Ascension Parish, adopted May 4, 1993, identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of this parish. And be it ordained by the Ascension Parish governing authority that the Ascension Parish zoning map is hereby amended as follows to attached exhibit, Ascension Parish zoning map. And if any portion of the ordinance is ever held to be invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision and shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of the ordinance. The ordinance shall be in full in effect as permitted by law. The exhibits are the Ascension Parish zoning map. The zoning map having been submitted, the voting thereon was as follows.
Open to public comment.
Motion to open public hearing by Mr. Sadler,
Second.
second by Mr. Longson. Okay.
Motion to close.
Motion to close by Mr. Sadler, second by Ms. Cazzo. Chair would entertain a motion on ordinance.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Todd Lambert, second by Mr. Chris Lord. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. We'll move along to agenda item number 19, reading of ordinance to declare surplus and authorize the sale and/or transfer of miscellaneous movable property.
Purpose to declare surplus and authorize the sale and transfer of miscellaneous movable equipment. Whereas the Parish of Ascension has certain assets which are no longer viable to retain, whereas these assets no longer serve or have any public purpose, whereas the Parish of Ascension desires to declare said assets as surplus and provide the sale or transfer of the same. Whereas be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Council acting in its capacity as a governing authority that is hereby declares the listing of assets attached to and made a part hereof as Exhibit A as surplus and authorize the sale or transfer of the same. And if any portion of this ordinance ever have been invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed separate, distinct, and independent provisions, and shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of the ordinance. The ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. The ordinance has been permitted to vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Open public comment.
Motion to open public comment.
Second.
Mr. Sadler, second by Mr. Lord.
Motion to close.
Motion to close public comment by Mr. Sadler, second by Mr. Johnson. Chair would entertain a motion on ordinance.
So moved.
We have a motion to move the ordinance by Mr. Johnson,
Second.
second by Mr. Lord. Any discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. We'll move along to agenda item number 22, reading of ordinance to revoke and relocate an existing 12-foot utility servitude and 30-foot private servitude of passage, lot 9-D-2 of the Kent Adale property.
To revoke a 30-foot private servitude of passage and 12-foot utility servitude along Lot 9D2 of the Ken Haydale property, Section 33, Township 10, South Range 3, Ascension, Louisiana, and to relocate both on the same lot. Said servitudes more particularly described in the attached plat map. Whereas the petition is petitioning the Ascension Parish Council to revoke a 30-foot private servitude of passage and 12-foot utility servitude located along Lot 9D2 of the Ken Haydale property, Section 33, Township 10 South, Range 3, East, Ascension, Louisiana, to relocate both servitudes on the same lot in Ascension Parish. Whereas the Planning Department, Drainage Department, and all relevant utility companies have reviewed and researched and said request and have no objection to the revocation and relocation. The Parish of Ascension hereby ordains that it grants the approval of revocation of 30-foot private servitude of passage and 12-foot utility servitude along Lot 9D2 of the Ken Haydale property, Section 33, Township 10 South, Range 3, East of Ascension, Louisiana, and the relocation of both servitudes on the same lot in Ascension Parish. Louisiana, more fully described in the plat attached here to and made a part hereof. All ordinance or parts of ordinance in conflict herewith are hereby and henceforth repealed. If any provision of this ordinance held invalid, such invalidity shall not affect the provisions herein, which are given effect without invalid provisions, and to the end of the provision, this ordinance hereby declared to be severable. The ordinance shall be effective 15 days after the adoption. The ordinance has been submitted to a vote. The debate thereon was as follows.
Motion to open public hearing.
Motion to open public
Second.
hearing by Mr. Todd Lambert, second by Ms. Cazzo.
Motion to close.
Motion to close public hearing by Mr. Todd Lambert, second by
Move the
Mr. Brian Malone Son.
ordinance.
We have a motion to move the ordinance by Mr. Shake Snyder,
Second.
second by Mr. Todd Lambert. Any discussion, any opposition? Motion passes. Move to agenda item number 25, reading of ordinance. I would choose to wait till we have the public hearing for the speakers. Reading of ordinance SR 14-07, revisions of the subdivision regulations in the Unified Land Development Code pertaining to family petition.
Purpose of the ordinance is to revise language in section 174026 in appendix 4 of the subdivision regulation of the Unified Land Development Code, whereas the Ascension Parish local government subdivision as defined by Article 6, Section 44, Louisiana Constitution, 1974. Whereas the parish of Ascension is the governing responsible body within its jurisdiction. Whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish adopted May 4, 1993 identifies the process and manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of the parish. Whereas the code was incorporated in Appendix 4 of the subdivision regulations of the Parish Unified Land Development Code adopted December 17, 2009. Be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority that Section 17-4026 in Appendix 6 of the Unified Land Development Code is amended here as follows. These changes are adopted as follows. See attached Appendix 4, Section 17-4026, Exhibit 1. In the event any portion of this ordinance is ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed separate, distinct, and independent provisions shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of the ordinance. The ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. The exhibits are Appendix 4, Section 17-4026. The ordinance has been submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Motion to open public hearing, Mr.
Motion to
Chairman.
open public hearing by Mr. Todd Lambert, second by Ms. Cazzo. We have speakers on this. First speaker we have is Mr. Larry Bates.
Good evening, council members.
Larry, would you pull the microphone
Can you
down
hear
a
it?
little bit?
Now, can you hear me?
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, we're here, like I said, to revise the ordinance, the family petition, close the loopholes, that's all I'm here for. I want to know that it's family petition, not deception. I want to make sure that I hear you guys right, or I understand you right. I'm hoping there'll be a change. We're creating a problem now on my end of the street, shall we say. We discussed it before, y'all probably seen us or heard us before, the situation what has developed in the past. I'm asking you, please revise it, because right now I'm doing a little bit of research myself on some situations happened just recently. I have a law involved in the situation. It's developing to a point that, you know, I'm wondering what to do. But please revise it. That's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Next, Brandon Bouquet.
Good evening, council. I'm a resident of Cinnamon, along here with my neighbors, and I'm here in front of you saying, please pass this revision. I fully support it. As some of you may or may not know, we have an issue on Highway 936 where a gentleman's trying to get around this family partition with this loophole and more or less start a trailer park in the countryside, what I like to call the country, where I grew up. And I'm currently building a pretty expensive home right now, and it looks like I'm going to be having some trailers directly across the street from me with new tenants. So I ask that you pass this revision. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, Lori Hoffman.
Hi, good evening. I'm also live on Highway 936. And I just want to bring up, at one of the planning and zoning staff members had said at one of the meetings that we went to that we needed to tread lightly with this being this tough decision about this homeowner and his property. So what I want to say about that, I hope that you don't tread lightly when you look at all of the homeowners that are around there and live there. As I'm sure y'all have heard, Mr. Stafford doesn't live there. And years ago, he started digging up the back of his property and dumped it on the front so that he could divide all of his lots. Without any kind of rules or regulation, he's just dug up the back of his property, which was in wetlands, and he flooded all of his surrounding neighbors and didn't care because he doesn't live there. And now he's found a loophole through this family partition that he wants to come in with this trailer park. So we're asking, please don't tread lightly for him, but think of all the people that do live there. And when it rained 13 inches in May of this year, so many of his neighbors flooded really bad. And he wants to get out of putting an expensive sewage treatment down and put a bunch of little water plants and water wells and so forth. So when we ever would get rain like that again, not only would we have our flooding, we would have his sewage all over where we live, and he doesn't live there. So please, we have lots of residents that live on Highway 936 and all around there that we've been living there for years, and it's our place, our rural country living. So please consider voting to fix this loophole. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Next, Ms. Sue Heath.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to respectfully request that you do approve the revisions to this family petition. There are known loopholes, and people are circumventing the other ordinances, which I think are extremely important, like subdivisions and trailer parks, especially with the influx of people we're expecting in this parish. They have to follow the rules. They can't use the loopholes in the family petition to do otherwise. The family petition is a variance. It's not even a requirement. It's not something that has to be in the ordinances. It's in the ordinances, and the key word is for families. For family who own a lot of property, who want to divide that property among their children, their grandchildren, their heirs, so everybody can live together. And I'm sure we're all aware of many areas in this parish where families do live together. I live on property that was homesteaded by my great-grandfather in 1862, and it's gone down through as many as 5 generations. So we want the family petition to be a family petition. We live in a rural area, like Laurie said. We all live there because we want it to be a rural area. As long as Mr. Stafford had cattle grazing on his property, I was fine with that. But I don't want a bunch of trailers on that property. He's subdividing under the family petition, or trying to, a few half-acre lots at a time out of 80 acres. If he continues to do that, we could have 160 individual lots right in the middle of our rural community. And it is zoned rural, and that's the way we want to keep it. It's not just the property. The property means something to us. Many of these people that live on it have lived there all their lives. They have 20 or more acres. There's an intrinsic value there because of our families homesteaded, or our families passing the property on down to us. So please, please accept the revisions to this family petition so that people will begin to follow the ordinances as they should. Thank you.
Sue. I don't have any other speakers.
Motion to close the public
Motion to
hearing.
close public hearing by Mr. Todd Lambert. Second by Mr.
Oh.
Oh, I apologize
Have one
for
more.
missing you.
Back up.
Hi, my name is Dawn Gronowski, and I live on North Highway 936.
I apologize, I found it. Thank you, Dawn.
Okay, and I just would like also to request that y'all approve this revision to the family partition, and we need to close the loopholes and stop the abuse. So, Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. The motion to close public hearing by Mr. Todd Lambert, second by Mr. Melanson. Close.
Move the ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion to move the ordinance by Mr. Todd Lambert, second by Mr. Kent Shake Snyder. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Lord.
I just want to say, I personally live on family land, subdivided, so we could live next to my family. I fully understand the importance of the true meaning of family partition and why we have it. However, I mean, as these speakers have so clearly articulated, and as we've all known other instances in the past, this is something that's been taken advantage of. I think I just want to say thank you to you all for working with our planning commission, working with our planning department on helping us fix this. It's something that absolutely needs to be done, in my opinion. So I just want to say I appreciate the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, Mr. Sadler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And all the folks that spoke tonight, I hear you. Basically, I just have a question. I support closing these loopholes. I'll go on record to say that right from the onset. I also, I think like every member up here, support not destroying the whole process, sort of like for family petitions, like we always talk about, not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. There are those people who do that family petition correctly, and clearly there are those who abuse it. So I agree something needs to be done. I guess I just need a little bit further education about subpart C, dot 3, which reads, no property owner shall be allowed to donate property to the same family member more than once through the family petition process, regardless of location. I would ask Mr. Compton to particularly address the regardless location and why that is needed in this law.
Thank you, Ricky.
So if an applicant comes to us with property in several locations across the parish, and they petition for a family partition in Galvez for their 3 kids, that's where we want their family partition to happen. If they have property in Dutchtown and they come and family partition to the same 3 kids, that by definition is no longer a family partition. They're creating lots for commerce. Choose where you want your family to be together and donate the property to them one time. I mean, the onus will be on the parish staff at that point to maintain a list. So when Randy Cluot comes and does a family partition, it's our responsibility to track, okay, Bob Cluot and Sue Cluot and Luke Cluot have all received their lots. They can't receive lots anymore through the family partition process. That's on us. We're taking on that burden and that responsibility because we think that's a loophole that needs to be closed.
Okay, very fine, but the question I guess I have is just to be sure. You mentioned, I'll use your example, in Galvez. Suppose that same family member, Randy, I guess you own property.
You can use me, brother.
In Galvez and in Prairieville up in my neck of the woods. So, and he gives it to, I can't remember the 3 names, and goes through the family partition process there in Galvez. That's fine and well and good. In no way, Ricky, does this law then preclude Randy from coming up in the Prairieville property and donating land by another process outside of family petition, just, you know, like, I want to give this person the land. It's just an idea that he needs to decide where he wants his kids to live, close to him or not.
Right, the family partition is a method to divide land, and that method involves a substandard road. It's a variance, as Ms. Heath described. It's something that you can't just do. And so if Mr. Cluot decides, I want to do that in Galvez, then if he wants to do it in Prairieville, then he's going to have to go to a judge and divide it by some kind of judge's decree, or he can use a simple division or a major or a minor subdivision. There's other methods, but he can't use the family partition.
All right, very fine, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Cazzo.
Ricky, I want to thank you for the explanation and certainly for all the work that you and your staff did to produce this document, particularly the impetus of these fine folks who just have been in this situation recently. It certainly gives us an opportunity to prevent things going forward that have been abused in the past. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, Mr. Shake Snyder.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ricky, I want to also thank you. I know it's been about a 6-year process from the time we first started looking at it. It's been discussed and cussed and whatever else, and I think done the homework, and the people have gotten involved and really took a look at what a true family petition is, and I think we're there. If we're not, And certainly it's up for review at any time to make sure, there isn't any more loopholes. Sometimes we think we pass things and somebody finds a way around them. So we'll continually review and make sure that good people in Ascension Parish has an opportunity to donate land to their family members, and we continue to live here and keep them close. So we appreciate all the hard work. People are thankful for the people getting involved and everything else. So thank you, Rick.
Any further discussion? Any opposition? Motion passes. We'll move along to agenda item number 28. Reading of ordinance to amend Chapter 18, Autonomous Boards, Commissions, and Authorities, Article 11, Consolidated Utility Districts, Division 2, General Sewer Ordinance.
To amend and supplement Ascension Parish Code of Ordinances, Chapter 18, Political Subdivisions, Autonomous Boards, Commissions, and Authorities, Article 11, Consolidated Utility District, Section 18-115 through 18-121, whereas Ascension Parish Local Government Subdivision defined by Article 6 of Section 44 Louisiana Constitution 1974, whereas the Parish of Ascension is the governing responsible body of the Consolidated Utility District, whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish adopted May 4, 1993 identifies the process and manner to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of this parish, and now therefore be it ordained by the Ascension Parish Governing Authority that the Code of Ordinances of Ascension Parish Board, Ascension Parish Board, Chapter 18, Political Subdivisions, Autonomous Boards, Commissions, and Authorities, Section Article 11, Consolidated Utility District, Sections 18-115 through 18-121 be amended and supplemented as follows, more fully described as Exhibit A attached. And if any portion of this ordinance ever have to be invalid or unconstitutional by any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed separate, distinct, and independent provision shall not affect the validity of the remaining portion of the ordinance. The effect of this ordinance shall be submitted by law. The ordinance has been submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Motion open public hearing.
A motion by Mr. Johnson, open public hearing.
Second.
Second by Mr. Joseph.
Motion closed.
A motion closed by Mr.
Second.
Joseph, second by Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
If I may, before we take a motion to move the ordinance, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dwayne Johnson with Keene Miller. Dwayne's the attorney that we brought in to help us draft this, and if the council will allow, I'd like for him to go ahead and introduce himself and kind of give a little bit of his credentials as to why we brought him in to help draft this ordinance.
Good evening. I'm Dwayne Johnson. I'm a partner with Keene Miller Law Firm. I've been doing regulatory practice before EPA, DEQ, Department of Health and Hospitals, Department of Natural Resources since 1992. My practice is primarily environmental. I do Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Safe Drinking Water Act, and then the Louisiana Environmental Quality Act, of course, and RCRA. My practice is a regulatory practice. I represent a number of industrial facilities in Louisiana on the river between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and a number of private sewage companies.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the ordinance with some corrections, and get Mr. Dwayne to help me with this if possible. A couple of concerns were raised prior to tonight's meeting, and I would like to try to address those now. Under definitions, there was a question of the definition for waters of the state, and as it currently reads now, that's the top of page 5 on the attachment. Waters of the state shall mean both the surface and underground waters within the state of Louisiana, including all rivers, streams, lakes, groundwaters, and all other water courses and waters within the confines of the state and bordering the waters of the Gulf of Mexico. And Dwayne, we were talking before the meeting, the fix to making that, or solving that, was to take out what language again?
Take out the word both and underground. So the revised definition would begin with waters of the state shall mean the surface waters within the state.
And then under 18.116.10,
there is a waiver division which reads, the parish president has the authority and discretion to issue a written waiver concerning the application of any provision of this division in any particular case when, in his or her opinion, based upon extenuating circumstances presented, it is determined that the health and safety of the public will not be jeopardized. It was requested, or it was discussed about adding in the, not only with the parish president, but also with an agreement of the Utilities Committee, adding that language in there.
So you would be adding the Utilities Committee?
Yes.
Into that?
Yeah, the parish president, along with the Utilities Committee, has the authority and discretion. And I'm not sure if that's legally how you would put it, Dwayne. Maybe you want to clean that up a little bit.
Yeah, the concept is that basically the parish president would have to act with the Utilities Committee. And so you could do it any number of ways. You could do it by adding that in order for him to act, the Utilities Committee also has to act. Or you could do it it's whatever you guys want to do, obviously. But you could also say that if he does provide that, the Utilities Committee would have the right to overturn him at their next meeting. It just depends on what you want to do. But if you want to do it where basically if they act in tandem, the language could be changed to read, the parish president and the utility committee have the authority and discretion to issue a written statement. So it would be and the word have.
Our natural progression is that all action comes through committee up to the council.
Yes, sir. So it would be the parish president and the utilities committee have the authority and discretion, so on and so forth.
Okay. And I've been looking for the number on it, Dwayne, and if you can help me out with it. I've had some discussion with some citizens. One of the requirements we have in here now that a licensed plumber would have to be used to run the line from the house to make the connection into our system when it's there. And I would like to change that to where a licensed plumber would have to be used to make the final connection and to tap into our system, but a resident could run the line from his house to that last point of contact on his own with a waiver to the parish for a hold harmless, as well as do the inspection of the parish to allow that to happen. I know I'm throwing this out at you, Mr. Martinez, last minute here, and everybody's free to comment on that, and I'm not sure which section that would need to go under, Dwayne. I couldn't find it.
I'm looking. Should be under public sewers.
I think it's pretty common that it's the responsibility of the residents up to the connection anyway.
Yes.
I think that's common.
Yeah.
To tap in, they have to have a licensed
Correct.
plumber to tap into the
We
system.
all agree with
Right.
that.
And after 4 foot, I don't know what the measurement is, 6 foot, it's their responsibility from there to home, resident.
And that's usually where they got to clean out.
Right.
Right.
And one of the other things that we did, just as a point of order on, one of the things that we did clean up in here at the Utilities Committee, I know there was some concern about it, let's see if I can find it, decommissioning the current system that you have, whether it be a MODAD or a septic tank. It did not have to be removed. It basically had to be filled in and left in a safe condition. So the language here it is. Completely remove the system or fill the treatment unit or fill the system treatment unit with sand, dirt, concrete, or other appropriate inert fill material, and completely fill any voids with sand or dirt, compacted and covered to adequately provide for safe domestic traffic such as walking, bicycling, lawn mowing, and the like. So that's one of the changes that we made at the Utilities Committee, so they don't have to remove those tanks out of the ground if they so choose not to, and avoid that expense, as well as having a landform type situation there. So I'll make the motion pending, excuse me, those revisions, and look forward to having any other discussion on it prior to that.
We have a motion with revisions by Mr. Johnson. Second by who's down there? Mr. Joseph. Any discussion? Yep. Yes, Ms. Castle.
I have one concern. several, but I think one that's more important. An individual has a brand-new MODAD they just put in, and, you know, let's say it's 2 or 3 years old, and our line becomes available. That citizen just loses the money they spent installing a system prior to the installation of parish-wide or parish sewer. That's a case for residents. What about and maybe that's not a huge loss for some people, but let's look at a business where maybe a system costs $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to put in, and then the line passes in front. That's a huge loss. So both business and the public can be impacted by this in a pretty serious way. So is there any provision in this document, I certainly don't see one, to explain how we're going to handle that in a way that does not injure our citizens?
There are a couple of things. If you look at 117.4, for the residential person who installs an individual system within 12 months within 12 months of having to connect to a public sewer, the fees can be deferred for no more than 12 months. Look at the second part of that. That does not address your commercial issue. The commercial issue may be addressed under the provisions requiring connection as established by the utilities director. And that is and standards to be developed. And basically, under those standards, as to who's going to have to connect and who's not going to have to connect it. It doesn't have to be everybody within 300 feet. It can be everybody meeting a certain class of sewer users within 300 feet. And that will be developed really by the utilities director pursuant to oversight by the utilities committee.
Let me get something straight, though. We're talking about utilities committee and all. ACUD number 2 is different than the utilities committee. ACU number 2 is a autonomous board, so we need to clarify who we're talking about when we're doing that, because the utilities committee is a committee of the council. We've been operating in a committee, but ACUD number 2 is a separate entity that ultimately, like the rates will be made by ACUD number 2, not the utilities committee and not the parish council. So we need to understand who we're talking about here when we're doing this. That's y'all decision, but we need to clarify that. If we're going to work through ACUD number 2, then they need to have meetings and act as ACUD number 2. Now, you still have a utilities committee of the council, but we need to make sure we're doing that right way. And this ordinance, it doesn't really specify that, but I just want to make sure everybody understands that there's going to be, ACUD number 2 will be meeting to do certain things. They don't have to meet all the time because they're going to have, you got an intergovernmental agreement with the parish president to run the day-to-day operations of it through our utility department. But we need to understand that concept. As far as who connects and who disconnects, when we get a sewer system, we're going to have to make a decision whether people are going to connect or not connect. That's going to be one of the issues. That's the issue that needs to be made also.
So on that line, and excuse me, Terry, kind of help try to clarify that.
Please.
So would it be something that we would need in the ordinance because, or would it be better as an attachment like the fee schedule would be, in that there's going to be, I would say, I would propose stipulations to that if we're going to allow, whether it be a business or a homeowner, to realize a return on investment of putting in a new MODAD or a new treatment system within a few years of the line being run in front of their business or the building, that they have to maintain a certain level of treatment, or, you know, whatever the level of that system is, that they have to keep it in good working order, that it's functioning properly, so forth, so on, pending parish inspection for a certain length of time, that they would be able to realize that return. So what would be the better route to go, I guess is my question.
Well, this is going to be a working document because you don't have a sewer system right now. The problem you run into now is you need to pass an ordinance to get the loans for the sewer system. We've got one now that really doesn't work, but this is a working document. You're going to be amending and changing it as you go along. You may be amending the ordinance, or you may be amending some of the attachments that operate under ACUD number 2. But I mean, you need to pass an ordinance to get the loan, and then you can always work with it. We don't have a sewer system right now.
Right.
So that's something that can be developed in the process. But you also have to, I mean, you need to either be in or out of the sewer business. You can't be partially in and partially out. I mean, I think that's a decision, that's the final decision that's got to be made. And I understand the financial cost, but you're going to have to make a decision. We're going to have sewer or we're not going to have sewer.
ACUD number 2 is actually the governing authority.
Right.
Which ACUD number 2 is the county.
Right.
Yes. One and the same.
Well, they're not one and the same. They got to operate, you're going to have a separate ACUD number 2 meeting to do things, but they're the same people.
Mr. Dawson?
Yeah, just real quick, and I understand what, Ms. Castro is saying, and absolutely. We have been, through the parish, been asked by several commercial entities to actually take over their systems that they even own. And the reason why, even though there's a substantial cost for them to put in those systems, they find that the actual burden of operating it, because they're not in the business to operate sewer treatment systems, that they would like to pass that on to others. And so the parish is looking at taking over several. I remember one new business opened, and immediately after they opened, they said, I hear you're doing something. As soon as you do it, please let us know, because we want to connect. I do think that, as was stated, that some of those issues could be addressed on an attachment, and we could look at a case-by-case basis. If someone to realize the investment over a period of time, that could be considered. But, our experience thus far is that there are a lot of commercial entities that really want to get out of the sewer treatment business and would like the parish to take over as much as possible.
I would certainly agree with you. My serious concern is that $3,000 or $4,000 for a MODAD is a real hardship for some families.
Yes.
And to then suddenly have, not be able to use that a year later.
In addition to well, and that's one of the things that we...
And then the additional expenses of tying in. So, if we can find a way to make this palatable for the citizens of Ascension Parish, I would certainly appreciate it. And certainly, if we agree to work to that end, then I would be satisfied.
That's our goal.
Thank you.
Yeah, real quick, for both y'all and everybody, I think, we're going to have a lot more deliberation here in a little bit. But, Neil, you touched on the basis of our ordinance, and that's what, we're getting into sewer business, right? We've made a commitment to try to move forward. We don't want to lose focus to the mission. We got dirty water running downstream. I live on the south end of the parish, okay? So DEQ, everybody wants it going in the Mississippi River. We got to work our goals toward getting it out of the ditches, out of the canal, and get it into the Mississippi River. I don't know that we're going to make this resolution palatable to everyone, and as was alluded earlier, we'll have amendments after amendments to address options and things that we're going to do, but to get it in place. And I appreciate you bringing up the ACUD number 2, the autonomy of that board, and when we're acting in a capacity of that board, just like many others do on drainage, okay? So with that, we'll continue with our deliberation. Mr. Sadler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, sir. I hate to be asking you questions that I asked via email, but to be sure, my understanding from Chairman Johnson, who I sent the email to a few days ago, that you have addressed these, and unfortunately I wasn't put on that thread, but he showed me on his wonderful smartphone and great technology your read comments to the things I brought up, and I got to say, it gave me a warm and fuzzy feeling that, I even made a comment that looks like the parish has hired a good man to do all this, but just want to be sure, because it sounds like this ordinance is probably going to, become law pretty soon here, that everything has been addressed. One that's already been talked about, and that is the putting of the sand in, that was my comment early on at a utilities meeting, into a MODAD. This is 27 pages long. It's hard for me to go back and even find that, but did you adopt the language I suggested or some alternative language?
That was, we adopted the language that you, not exactly the language, but the concept totally. Let me give you the site on that so you can take a look.
That's okay, but I mean, so that the people know out there, if they come within, or we bring a tail line, I should say, within 300 feet of a property line, and they're forced to connect to our system, it's going to be an either-or thing. They can take the tank out, as I understand it, or they can leave it in the ground.
That's correct.
Fill it with, I use language like inert dirt and sand and stuff like that, and probably not even knowing what I'm doing.
Sand, dirt, concrete, or other appropriate inert fill material.
And we'd be happy with that as part. Thank you very much. Section 18, 115.6, fees and charges. What exactly did you do there? I'm looking at the ordinance That I was able to find, 'cause it's right at the front, and I'm not sure anything changed there. Is that, and I don't remember even what you wrote in red.
That was the one about the fees and charges.
Yeah, it says nothing about capital expenditures or operation and maintenance cost as being part of fees and charges in that section.
And what I wrote was, we can, obviously, the council can change that as necessary, but also take a look at some other provisions that are within the draft. If you look at 117.4, 117.5, and 117.8, I think that may address some of your concerns.
Okay, I'll look at that later, and I'll trust you for that. The definition sections for community sewer system,
Yes.
I'm not an attorney, but it looked like the state of Louisiana's definition for community sewer system, quote unquote, might be a little bit different than what we're talking about in terms of the parish sewer ordinance per se. Has that been rectified, or do we need to fool with that?
Obviously, again, I mean, preface everything I say, we can do whatever the council wants, but understand, this ordinance is not addressed to regulating parish-owned sewer facilities.
Right.
Owned by the parish, operated by the parish. What it's addressed to is addressing those sewage facilities that are not municipal-owned and not parish-owned.
Stuff we're gonna get to, like
That's right.
modified P16.
It's individual
right.
sewage systems and community sewage systems.
Okay.
And that what we really don't want to include the parish systems in there. The parish systems, as are all these systems, will continue to be regulated by the Department of Health and Hospitals under the Sanitary Code and Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality, to the extent they have discharges to surface
All
waters.
right. And very quickly, on the waters of the state, that was something else I had.
We corrected that one earlier.
It's only surface water now.
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. Let's see, I had some additional comments after the different named sections. No inclusion of the user charge system. I felt rather strongly that we need to tell, the citizens, our users, how much that they will be expected to pay.
And the idea there is basically that those rates will be posted on the parish website
Right.
as developed.
You don't feel like it's necessary to put that in the ordinance per se?
I don't. I think that it's necessary basically to put in the ordinance how
How people can find out about it?
how they can find out about them and how they will be set. So that basically the parish says, this is how we're going to set them, and this is where they will always
But
be.
if we put numbers in the website, and then all of a sudden, we decide to have a rate change, which we don't have to go through the Public Service Commission to do so, we just change it on the
Well, it has
website,
to,
it
it
becomes
has to
binding
be
to
done
this law.
through the mechanism that's authorized by the ordinance.
Well, yeah.
As
we'd
to
have go
whoever
through the
sets
committees
it,
and-
they can set it
Okay.
pursuant to
Fair
their,
enough.
yes, sir.
That's fine.
HCUD number 2 will set those rates.
Set those
That's-
rates. The
Based
user
on the
charge
budget.
system, I felt should include details such as, and I apologize, I don't want to go through all this, tie-in fees, septic tank rate, stumping. It's actually using the headings and multiple questions under each of those headings, existing septic tank and MODAD sampling equipment, et cetera. Lots of different questions there, and again, with 27-page ordinance in front of me in teeny print, I can hardly see it. To see actually what you did, I might have could have read it again, but it'd been a real help about a senior thread. Basically, what did you have to say in those areas?
In all of those, that's going to be part of the fee structure that is set pursuant to what way the ordinance is. And so the tie-in fees, that's going to be set by the utility district and posted on the website. So all of that information, each one of those things that you want addressed
Right.
should be addressed by the rate
Not
setting
just what it's
authority.
going to cost you, but what it's going to, per month to use it, but
Yeah, all of
how
that-
much you're going to pay to tie in.
All of that should be basically posted on the website after approved as far as rates by the rate-setting authority.
And last but not least, and finally, what did you think about the idea of a tiered water usage system in these fees? But again, you're probably going to say that's none of my business, and it's up to you guys.
I think that's probably right. It's whatever you guys think.
My concern is, and I want to say it in the record tonight, is the analogy I gave is, you have a restaurant, got 200 customers, they got one or more bathrooms, and they're flushing the commodes hundreds, maybe times a night, versus in my home, we may flush a toilet 3 or 4 times.
Having it set based on water usage makes a whole lot of sense.
Right. Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I just got a quick note. I want to go back, basically on the way with the parish president. And Benny, you talked about the utilities committee.
Mhm.
Should that be ACUD number 2 or what?
That's whatever y'all want to do. You have a utilities committee now that operates But you also, but when you get into this and start setting rates and everything, ACUD number 2 is not gonna be utilities committee, it's gonna be approved by the whole council. If you want every council member to be at every meeting, you can do that. I think the idea that y'all been operating under is we're working toward this process through a utilities committee. You can always change that yourselves and do it, because but ultimately, like setting rates, that's gonna be ACUD number 2. I would assume that utilities committees would make recommendations, and you go to ACUD number 2, and you would handle it just like that.
I'm just trying to get the verbiage right up front, you know, just that's what I'm asking about. Yes, Mr. President.
I think once you do this ordinance, I'm not sure ACUD is all utilities, so I don't know why you would need a utilities committee. And it's kind of like a drainage board. Why would you have a drainage committee? Well, you got a board, that's the governing board. I mean, I think that it's utilities.
Yeah, you see that going,
Acknowledge that utilities committee and then move to ACUD number 2 as the governing authority like the drainage.
just like East Central Drainage, West Central Drainage. Yeah, I understand, and that's the evolution of it anyway. Yes, Mr. Shakespeare.
We're doing this already on the West Bank, ACUD was number 1.
Yeah,
Mostly with water, and they've been, but there are also some sewer with governmental agreements with Donaldsonville that has been worked out. There have been some issues with rates and hookups and things of that sort. As they come up, the ACUD meets these problems one-on-one. You cannot, it's impossible to forecast everything that can happen, and you know, we will grow and change a little bit as we see the individual problems. I think we can get as best as we can with this, and then move forward with ACUD number 2, overlooking it and oversight, and I think things can be adjusted as need be to meet the needs of the people on the East Bank, because things change. And one thing we found out, that regulations and there's different things change with the state and DHH, and priorities change, and finances change. That may necessitate one thing or another. So we need to keep our options open and be able to adjust as we continue to move forward. But as I think O'Neill said, or Randy said, we either in or we out. And I think it's very important to get in the utilities district set up, because we're going to find out that we're going to be involved in other utilities, whether we like it or not, down the line, and because they all interact eventually. And so I'd just like to see us move forward and get something done and get a shovel in the ground and get this thing started.
thank you, sir. Mr. Oliver Joseph.
I want to make sure and say a big kudos. There are a lot of people working on this, but Benny has taken a lot of time and done a lot of work and involved a lot of people to get information. So I just want to make sure everybody knows what amount of work that was done, the amount of cooperation that he had asked for, and input that he had asked for. And I feel like everybody's had the opportunity to have their input. If you didn't, shame on you, because I know he's asked numerous times, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shakespeare. Mr. Oliver Joseph.
Yes, this document here, this ordinance, it have to go to DEQ, and they're gonna review it. It's just the same way all the money, if anything in this document is wrong, they will kick it back and tell us correct it to meet their requirement. I understand. I understand, Mr. President, but, I mean, we went through this process with ACUD 1, and this all is documented. Any recommendation they make coming back that we miss to get the money, they will notify us. But they're just looking for a document that you can work with and make sure it's the safety of the community for the sewage project.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lord.
The only thing I'm still really struggling with is what Councilman Cazzo brought up earlier about the folks who just put it in, whether it's private or commercial. I mean, I'm not comfortable with 18.117.4 where it says they have a year for residential, and then commercial, we're just going to rely, they have to work it out with the utility director, or we'll post it online for that. I'd be more comfortable with if it was something that was set so that people know. I mean, if I just open up a business and I just put in $50,000 and I have a year, I'm going to be upset. Versus if I knew maybe it was a graduated schedule, based on how long it's been. So maybe I'm just going to try to explain this, my thought process. If you had, let's say, 7 years, if it's been longer than 7 years, then you have to connect within a year. If you put it in 5 years ago, then you have 2 years to put it in. If you just put it in 1 year ago, then you have 6 years. I think a schedule like that would be more defined. It would let people know right out the bat their return on investment. And it's a small thing. I mean, I understand what, I think it's got to be in there, frankly. It's too big of an outlier to just not be specific about.
Thank you, sir. I would just like to redefine the fact that, that's a good suggestion, that you're talking about, say, using the 7-year term, is that they only have the system in 1 year, then they've got 6 years to get to connect. Is that what you're saying?
So they return on investment,
That they
yes.
can return on investment. But that's not going to get the sewer out of the ditch, okay?
I understand.
All right, so.
But their system,
some-
I guess,
something-
their system's
something
brand
in-
new, so I guess
Yeah.
that was my thought process.
Yes, Mr. President.
To address that, basically, in a business, they don't, it's kind of like all these developers, they hurry up and get the system to whoever, one of the operators, because they don't want the liability. Okay? And the businesses that we've talked to on airline, I don't care if you're getting 20 years, I can guarantee you they're going to hook up the first day, because they don't want that burden and having to send in reports every month and having to deal with it. Whatever you do, it doesn't matter. I think basically the businesses are going to be the one that's going to jump. But you can set something like that.
Yeah, I guess I'm just speaking from personal experience, owning 2 businesses in the parish and haven't put them to the ground. If they, and they're in the zone where we're talking about doing it, it would be a problem.
I would think some flip-flop of them connecting early and getting some kind of credit down, moving forward.
Yeah, I particularly like that idea. Did you acknowledge me, Randy? I'm sorry.
No, Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Todd
Chairman.
Lambert.
I guess my issue here is we have a lot of unknowns, especially when it comes to the fees. And I don't know if we can come up with the unknowns, say the user fees, the hookup fees. I'm hearing hookup fees of like $2,500 to hook up. Then you got to disregard your existing system. To disregard your existing system, you may be able to do it yourself, but you do have to get someone to pump it out. That's an additional $500 or so right now if you got to pump one out, and then make your tie-in. So, and I know by state, if we pass a trunk line within 300 feet of a dwelling, you have to hook to it. All what we're talking about is our systems that we actually going to run. I'm more concerned with the individuals, because if everybody up here knows that we're starting a real small section of the sewer system, it might be 30 years down the road before we see it on the eastern part of the parish. What in this ordinance is going to affect the individual homes now that doesn't have a sewer trunk line running in front of their houses? Are there going to be fees to these homeowners? Individual systems that's been there for years.
None.
If they're
But
not,
they had something about in here about individual sewer systems.
yeah, no, the individual sewer systems would be regulated. If they're not,
And I guess there again for administration, how are we going to regulate this entire parish? The state is supposed to regulate it now. I know the sewer systems operate under the Board of Health, which the state is supposed to come around. That's why we have pipes sticking out the ground for MODADs for them to come test them. They don't have enough manpower and funding to test them. Will the parish, with what we have funding, will we have enough funding? Or what are you going to charge to come inspect an individual home? There's so many unknowns on the fee part of this that I have some concerns with. Which, you know, I realize when we run this trunk line, we're gonna have to hook to them. Whoever this trunk, that's state law, you have to hook to it. But we're starting with a $60 million project that might be just a little smidgen of what 900 million we need.
Right.
So I'm just worried about the existing, and I know we're still dumping in the ditches, you know, but hopefully, you know, the Board of Health, you know, is supposed to regulate that, and they will. You know, if a homeowner has an issue, the Board of Health will come out, and if it's raw sewage, they're gonna address it, and it could make you put a new system in. So.
The first thing you talked about the cost. I mean, I think in the agreement it talks about a franchise fee that we were looking at helping to fund some of the monitoring and testing that's going to be required in all the systems. The goal was that when you're looking at individual systems, that is a different thing than you're looking at.
Correct.
Because.
But it's in here.
Yeah,
parts of it.
DEQ sets the discharge limits for a big system. So there are numbers that they say that you have to meet these limits and BOD and TSS and all these things, which they're monitoring, they're required to send in samples, and those things we can look at. But individual homeowners, they don't have that. So it's going to be somewhat of a visual inspection because there are no particular numbers that we have to go by just to make sure maybe the aerator is functioning, that, you know, there's not any, you know, bad odors coming out of the system and those kind of things, and just kind of let the homeowner know. That's kind of, you know, more of a qualitative than quantitative type analysis.
Because right now, in the rural area, me and Randy's district, and there's quite a few Galvez, there's a lot of septic tanks out there without MODAD systems on them. And, you know, if you treat them like you're supposed to, you know, but,
Right.
you know, you don't have an aerator.
Right.
You don't have,
It's going to be the
you
same
know.
thing for a septic system. It's just going
Right.
to have to be a kind of visual look and inspection, make sure there's no odors and those kind of things.
And will that, when they come out and inspect it, would that be a fee to that homeowner?
There's not going to be a fee. The
Okay.
goal is to have that funded through the actual.
And where the franchise, who is paying for the franchise if we own the system? Where's the franchise fees coming from?
The franchise fee is basically going to be paid by the community sewage systems. And the way this is set up is an active franchise, must have an active franchise agreement with the particular utility district.
Okay,
And the amount of the quarterly franchise fee is going to be $5 per customer
okay.
quarterly.
And just to say, you know, one more comment is that, yeah, and you're right, Mr. Lambert, we get those calls.
Right.
And we have, you know, we have constituents in everybody's district that say, can you please come and do something to help us with a bad problem? Right now, all we can do is say we can look up who's the owner or who treats the system, and we could give you their number, you can call them, and then we'll call DHH or get DHH to come out there because there's a complaint. This will allow us to take some action. If there is a system that's causing a problem, we now will have the ability to go out and do a test on the community system and see what the issues are.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the goal is just to provide a service to take care of those problems that are causing constituents issues.
Okay. And just one other thing, we talked about fees. I'm kind of like past president. I think the governing authority should be the one to make the decisions on fees, which we do that now on any other entity that we deal with, you know. We the one make the fees, so. I know whether it's a utility, ACUD number 2 or whatever, but it still needs to come to the governing authority, which is the council.
Good deal. Ms. Castle?
Yeah, I have to back up, unfortunately, to an issue that Councilman Satterley brought up. We do not own water. So we have an issue in determining fees by water usage. Is there a mechanism by which that can be done when the water is owned by another entity?
All you would be doing is basically using their database to determine how much water is being used, and it depends on your agreement with who's ever supplying the water. You'd have to have an agreement with who's ever supplying the water to provide you that information.
And an individual who's on a water well, not on a...
That's going to be more difficult because you're not going to know how much they're using. You may basically say individuals with a household of so many in a water well, you're going to be charged this fee.
Flat rate.
If you have a larger household, it's going to be a different fee, or if you have more than one water well. But it will have to be set based on something like that.
Okay. And I understand that we'll do that as we move forward, but I wanted to clarify.
There are a myriad number of ways that you can set fees, but obviously what you're concerned about, and justifiably, is setting a fair fee.
Absolutely. So my only concern now is the issue of some kind of, because it is in this ordinance, some kind of change to that 12-month or 6-month thing that, I think Councilman Lore's suggestion that we graduate that on a 7-year scale might be a good idea. But should that be done, and I'm asking, should that be done now, or is that something that could be done more effectively later?
I just want to say that everything that we have in this ordinance can be changed, should you decide to do it.
Well, I understand that, but I also have a problem with when you have it in front of you, why delay something till later?
And I
mean,
understand
it's just a matter of amendment after amendment after amendment. I mean, if we can fix that now, and we're all in agreement that it should be, and we haven't voted, but if we're all in agreement that it should be, then I would like to see it fixed now,
Yeah.
rather than have to amend it at some point in the
I just don't know if we got enough
future.
information in us to make an educated guess.
I'd like to
Yeah,
address
you-
that if I could, because
Sure.
I guess it comes down to whether we want it as a part of the ordinance or whether we're comfortable with it being an attachment, because what I would like to see and what we envision with it through the Utilities Committee and our discussions in the past with it is that
Attachment.
it would be basically not based on a set year, because depending on the type of system and what it costs the individual to install it, I would believe it'd be more practical to set it up on a depreciation basis, as long as they kept the system up, pumped it out accordingly, maintained it according to whatever the specifications were. To just arbitrarily set a specific timetable as 6 or 7 years would not accomplish what we needed to accomplish with that. And so, I mean, in conversations we've had with DHH in the past, we haven't gotten a solid answer from them on this as far as whether or not state law would allow us to do that or not. And if we could set it up in our ordinance, it still may be something that DHH may overrule and say you can't do it anyway. But with all that being said, I agree with you. I think it's something that needs to be there. The thing that we would have to agree upon tonight is whether we believe it would work as an attachment or an addendum to the ordinance, or whether or not we would want it to be part of the ordinance.
Could we just remove the one that says 6 months or 12 months, and let's deal with it in the future when we have a better idea of how we need to? Because we don't, when this is published, the public would certainly have just cause to be alarmed.
Right.
That's under 117.4. You want to remove the last sentence of that section?
Well, that would be my suggestion, that if we're going to modify it anyway, let's just take it out.
Or could we, you could either take it out or and make it as an addendum. We got a couple.
Unless there's some reason why we should.
Please, out of caution.
Sir? You finished, Terry?
Yeah.
I thought you, I'm sorry, I thought you pointed.
All right, I just wanted Ms. Caswell to have her time.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Yes,
We
Mr.
just-
Shakes nodded.
We just make sure, this is a general document that
Yes.
we're going to fine tune from here. And things are gonna work out. There are gonna be some guidelines put upon us. When we send information to DEQ, they're gonna say, hey, you have to have a certain percentage of people hooked up, you have to have this is gonna be your amount of money that you have to take in to make this system operate and to pay back this loan. So we're gonna have to generate funds, so some of our decisions are going to be based on what happens on financial. Some of them are gonna be based on what we do, and as we go forward, then we can work out the individual situations that arise. But it's my belief that experience that we've gone through on the West Bank is that this beginning document is just a template that as we go, we start identifying things and have the ability to make the changes that you need to, depending upon what comes up, because we're not gonna know right now whether it's 6 months, 12 months, or whatever. And the more we get specific, the harder it's gonna be to get something right. But the other thing that was talked about was the changes and how to inspect and everything. St. Tammany does visual inspections. I've spoken with the person from the state that does these things. Happen to be doing business in other parishes where people go through this. They're doing it there. That parish goes by and visually inspects individual systems to see if they're operating according to what they operate. If it's a sewer system, just a septic tank, they just see if it's hooked up and if it's flowing, so on and so forth. If it's a MODAD, they operate on smell and whether it's working and whether they have a chlorinate or whatever. And then the other, that parish and other parishes go by and on times that your electricity is turned off or for certain permits, at that point in time, you have to get an inspection by DHH, and they come out and they, and a plumber to see if your system is up to date. In other words, if you don't have if they believe that you should have a MODAD and you don't have a system that is considered a residential system up to date, you have to do one at that point in time. That's in place right now. Other parishes are doing that, and you have to fill that up and bring that up to date. Also in this parish, if you have a sale of a house and electricity is off, you have to put a new system in.
Go by and research that.
So we're doing a lot of this right now, and I think it's going to work out. There's going to be some hiccups, but I do think it's going to work out.
Yes, Mr. Malone.
Sir, I still have quite a few concerns with it too, but just a couple quick ones. One is section 18-120.12, going back to what we did at the very beginning with the waivers. This is one that kind of gives, again, a power directly to just the director of utilities to change fees or waive parts of fees or those type of things without. I think that should be a decision of the board, because when you have one person making decisions like that, they can pick and choose, play favorites. You end up with, that can become political decisions and picking winners and losers, and that's always a bad thing, I think. So I think that's one that definitely needs to be looked at too. And I also, and I understand we need to do it to fund it, of course, but the franchise fees, I've got a major issue with, especially at the $5 a month. Kind of like the resolution, we just went through this with passing a resolution to go and fight whether some of these private companies could get rate increases recently. We're continually bashing them and hounding them to get their systems up to date and to be in compliance and to stay in compliance, and yet we're consistently fighting them from having enough money to be able to stay in compliance. And I mean, it's just one thing after another to go and try to go after and take over private companies. And if you can do it to these private companies, once you open that door, what's stopping us from going after other private companies and other businesses? And I mean, that to me is always a concern when it comes to government, and it is in this case, primarily because we've done it or tried to do it on a couple other occasions with these exact same companies over the last 6 months, and now this is just one more attempt at that, one more step at that. And so I just have major concerns about that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sadler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris and yourself, sir, I share the concern that I, for one, if I just put in a ton of money to a new system and we'd have this ordinance here that would say, hey, too bad, you just got to hook up to us and you lose that investment, i.e. his, I don't know, 7-year plan, whatever you want to call it. That said, Randy, I also appreciate what you said about putting sewage into the ditch. That, if we do a plan like that, they're still offenders. And I believe that that's what this is all about. We need to stop pollution as soon as possible. I'm wondering if there couldn't be some sort of or is there already existing in this ordinance a built-in compromise if we would adopt something along the lines of Mr. Lohr's proposal? For example, wouldn't a new system that's only been in vogue or in operation for 1 year, it's recently installed, essentially it's new, basically be in compliance, maybe then a little bit less next year, et cetera? Because what I find, like in my borough, the north part of Prairieville, a lot of people have MODADs, a lot of them. and they are not having them inspected. And I know they're likely, I don't know it for sure, you know, not in compliance and so forth, but these new ones hopefully should be. And even if they're not in compliance, does not our ordinance provide for finding them and so forth and so on?
It
So,
provides for inspection and a
right.
compliance.
And I don't know, and I also,
Fine.
I'm gonna throw Todd into it. I appreciate what he had to say too. I don't know how we can actually do that and pay for it and all. So it's a big bundle of catch-22s there, but, I wouldn't mind, and I realize we're gonna probably pass this in a minute, as Kent said, and maybe this is the last go-round, but, seeing something in there along the lines of what Mr. Lord said, that, you know, protect those people. I've already had calls about that, you know, so you telling me that if, you know, the tail line comes this close to my house, or my property line as it's defined now, and I just spent this ton of money, it's just too bad. And I'd like to have a better answer for them than just, yes, it's too bad, because we already share, deserved or not, you know, maybe not the best image among the citizens because we're the government and we're bad. But I mean, in the new systems, I think the guys that are really messing up are the ones that are 20 years old. I don't know why I picked that particular number. They're the polluters and so forth, and that's what we're trying to stop. But it's going to be tough. I mean, you can't square wave this law right into being and not offend some people. But if there's pleasure among this council to do something like Chris was talking about, I would support that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Joseph?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, guys, this is not an easy decision, because you're trying to please everybody out there. You're not going to do it. And I'm going to just go back about 2 years ago when ACU D1 was in trouble. Nobody on this board had a problem talking about, y'all go up on rate because we can't survive. Okay? This is the system that you're going to adopt right here. This system here, you pass this, you want sewage. The federal government may come in, DEQ may say you got to have 80% of the people online. And here's your rate to survive. I know I done heard Mr. President say, well, we had a surplus of $3 million a year to pay for this. Now that's kind of shaky. Well, that might have been $45 a month. Well, now, because he don't have the fund, it might be $60. We don't know that. But somewhere along the line, you can go through this document and find an excuse on something that you are not pleased with. But do you want sewage or don't you? And that's the bottom line here. There's a working document, the attorney said, the experts said it, it's a working document. So we can debate this all night, but I'm telling you, the government gonna come in here and say you gotta have 80% of the customer. If you got an old sewage and you feel you bought a new one, and you feel for it, and you don't have the 80%, you're gonna tell them, you're gonna change the law. We don't care if you put it in 2 days ago. We have a sewer system in front of your house, hook up to it. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's reality when it comes down to balancing the budget. You know, I'm pretty sure everybody know it. Everybody keep on hollering. We got a bunch of Republicans here. Balance the budget. Balance the budget. You're going to have to make that decision. That's the bottom line. I'm done.
Thank you, sir. Once more, I'm going to let you have the floor there, Mr. Johnson, but I just want to interject that don't lose focus to the mission. We've been under sanctions within our parish for a while. It's getting worse. I think this issue, some of you guys that have been on the council a long time, or some of the staff, parish president, it's as far back, I'm going to use the term 20 years, but it may not be. It came up and probably could have been done for about $500,000 less 20 years ago, and we might not be having this discussion today. We might be having rate discussions, but I can tell you this, I do reserve the right to be the councilman of District 6 in Santa Monica and Lake, Louisiana, and the fact is that we know for a fact, unless you're in a subdivision, we're probably not going to look at sewer trunk lines for a long time unless it becomes very lucrative and very feasible to find some way to do that. But what we are looking at in our part of the parish is the wastewater coming down in every stream and ditch because it goes down, it flows downhill. That's an old saying, but it's very true, okay? We've got to put something in the path for the future we're gonna evolve from a utilities board to an ACUD board, I'm sure. That's gonna happen whether we're elected or not. Because it's gonna handle all the utilities on this side of the river. Our parish is gonna continue to grow. I agree with some of the conversation about the commercial. I know that that's very expensive, but still in all, they don't want to have responsibility for their wastes. It becomes a burden to people that are not in the business of handling that. And just to clarify, we talked about we don't have water. Well, one day we may reach out to get water, okay? And just the mechanics of the billing of wastewater or sewer is based on a percentage of your water intake into your house, because so much of it's going in the sink, some of it's you're gonna drink, some of it you're gonna flush down the toilet, okay? That's why the larger businesses, they actually pull up another meter for their irrigation and stuff to keep that ratio in line. So, I don't think that we got anything in here other than the core basis of this ordinance that can't be changed and probably wouldn't be changed, because as we rotate in and out as elected officials serving people, we're gonna have different opinions coming in, and that will change. And probably change for the good, because we can't do everything perfect this round. I do understand the conversation, Mr. Melançon's and several others about the residents, the ones that I represent for sure, that are gonna be paying a fee, and not seeing a service, a real big service for it, But hopefully we'll see a cleaner ditch. Hopefully we'll see a canal that I swam in when I was a kid that somebody else can go swim in one day. Mr. Lord.
I just want to be clear, I'm good with all the rest of the ordinance, with the amendments that Mr. Johnson made. I still cannot get over the fact that people who have made new investments, not only from the businesses, personally, I just restored a 120-year-old house 2 years ago, invested in a MODAD, put it in the ground. I think it's functioning well. I'm actually one of the few that checks it. I should be able to recoup my investment on that. I know there's plenty of other people who feel the same way, who just built a house, just built a subdivision, that are going to be in the area where the line's being run. I'm not comfortable with it being 1 year, so I'm going to offer what I suggested earlier as an amendment, and that's something I can live with. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to. So I'm going to offer that graduated schedule as an amendment for 7 years, as I discussed. I want that added under 18.117.4. That you have, if it's been within 7 years, follows the graduated schedule as I explained earlier, and if it's after 7 years, since it was in the ground, then you have to connect.
Second.
We have a motion to amend by Mr. Lohr, and with that motion, that's second by Ms. Cazzo. What you stated, Mr. Lohr, you want that amendment that you stated plus the other amendments that
Yes, yeah. It's
Councilman
separate, I'd like a
Johnson,
separate vote on my motion for my amendment. And because I'm assuming, unless that's Councilman Johnson,
Motion and a
it's up to him. But I'd like a vote on my amendment.
Question.
Yes.
Because while I understand what Mr. Shadley said a minute ago about if I have a system that's in the ground for a year, yeah, that system is probably operating as long as they got their aerator plugged in to a capacity or to design. But there's also 3 to 5 years on all those systems that need to be pumped out. And that's one of the things that, to make them operate at optimum levels. And so if you go in and just put an arbitrary scale of those times without having, while I understand Mr. Shadley was saying, you're allowing these folks to have a variance of connecting to avoid, put off spending the money to connect and realize a recoup on that. My opinion, there should be an obligation with that. If we're going to go ahead and give them an exception not to connect, they have to have some type of deal in there to maintain their system. While we can go in and fine them, my deal with it is if I'm going to allow you an exception to not require you to connect into my system when it's there, and you're not maintaining your system, while I can go back and fine you for that, why wouldn't the fine be to automatically connect at the end if you're not maintaining? We'll give you, if you go in, you pump brakes, you didn't realize it, you go back and you connect, you go back and you fix it, buy a new pump, those type of things, you give them the normal thing like we have in there, the 30, 60, 90 days, whatever, to get it in compliance. That's not a problem without anything. But I think if you're gonna do this, I would much rather not necessarily a graduated scale. What I said earlier, I think basically is, as long as you figure out what the depreciation is for those different systems, they would be a graduated scale based on a cost to the resident or to the business. But they gotta keep their system up. And if they don't, then they would be forced within 60, 90 days to if they can't get it within, back online, then they gotta connect. It's, what you're saying here now is that, or my question is what you're saying, or what I read into it is that if they go in there and they don't keep their system up, we go back and 60 days, okay, you gotta do it. They get it in place, and then another 6 months down the road, you go back and something happens, they unplug it or whatever they do, you got 60 days to get it back in. How many times are you gonna go back to the well with somebody like that, as opposed to just going in there and saying, we're gonna allow you this exception to where you can recoup the money that you've invested, but you've got an obligation to the parish to make sure that you maintain your system, and without that, then you're gonna be required to connect before that graduated time frame is over with. And that's kind of what, it holds a little bit more feet to the fire to make sure they maintain their system to optimum, get it pumped out every 3 to 5 years, whatever the requirements are, keep the aerator up and operating, and those type of things. And I think that protects us as well as gives them not only the leniency of doing it, but also gives some incentive to make sure that they maintain it. And that's, I guess that's my question. Do you allow for that, or do you just go in and say 7 years and that's the cutoff? Because they may have some commercial systems that it may take longer than that to realize that return. You know, that's my question.
I need a clarification from you, Mr. Law, on your amended motion on the 7 years, that they would be allowed the graduated scale of 7 years to connect?
If they have installed a system within 7 years, it follows the graduated scale. If they put in a system and it's longer than 7 years, then it follows they have to connect.
Can I make a comment? I think you're making a bigger problem than you're trying to solve, because once there's a line run there, there's no ditch to go into. There's gonna be no ditch to put your fluid into.
Yeah, you're
So the lines will be there.
mandatory to hook to it if that line passes 300.
Well, what I'm saying is you're talking about running the fluid into a ditch when there's no ditch left.
That may or may not be. I mean, just because you run a line, you may not fill that ditch in and put culverts in.
But you may not have a ditch. You're talking about.
That's true.
Just real quick, I don't disagree with your intent and your
Right, no, I
second.
think we're saying the same thing.
But basically, if they would hook up front and then you give them the credit on the billing for
We got a
7 years.
motion
but
on the floor?
everybody hooks up, you know what I mean?
We got a motion on the floor to vote?
Yeah, but the session's not done.
We have an amended motion on the floor and a second.
We're still discussing.
Did someone second that?
We're in this, yes, we had a second by Ms.
All right, let's
Castle.
vote.
Well, we still have some discussion going on.
No.
Question on the motion.
You'd have to call a question.
You
and
call
do
for a question,
two-thirds
Mr.
majority.
Joseph.
Move on to the vote, that's all.
You're going to question on the motion? That's what you have to do.
Yeah, all right, I got a question on
But
the
it takes a
motion.
2/3, just FYI, Mr. Chairman.
He needs a second first.
He's got a second, he already has a second. We have a motion by Mr. Laura, second, amended motion by Mr. Laura, second by Ms. Cazzo. We have a question?
Question on the
floor.
motion, by
Question on the motion.
and a second.
Do we have a second?
Somebody second it.
Second by Mr. Turner. We have a vote on the question.
It has to be 2/3
Two-thirds vote on the question.
on the question. Yes, ends debate. Jessica?
Madam Secretary, roll call.
Councilwoman Terry Casso, how do you vote?
No.
Councilman Benny Johnson.
No at this time.
Councilman Oliver Joseph.
Yes.
Councilman Todd Lambert.
No.
Councilman Chris Lohr.
Nope.
Councilman Brian Melanson.
No.
Councilman Doc Satterley.
A no vote means we have further discussion.
Right.
Correct.
No.
you all about that, Doc.
Councilman Ken Snyder.
Come on, Kent, you gotta do it out loud.
No. Speaking to the microphone, please.
Councilman Travis Turner.
Mr. Malone, did you get Mr. Malone?
Yes.
Yes, you did.
Okay. The question fails.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion.
Discussion.
We're still in discussion, okay?
Question.
Yeah, let's
It's not question on the motion, that's just question.
Yeah,
Discussion.
so, real quick, I got another speaker.
That's fine.
That was kind of waiting in vain. Please give everybody a turn.
I'm sorry, Todd, but what we were talking about before calling the question is a violation. I believe, Benny, if I got that right, one violation would, like a one-strike rule, you'd be out. I have a problem with that. That's too harsh. But I'm not sold even on Chris's idea of 7 years, and maybe there could be a compromise where it could be less, particularly based on what Benny also said, that we should be pumping out these systems every 3 or 4 years anyway. Okay? So, can we maybe, I don't know, have amended a motion if someone wanted to offer it? I know you're going to ask, is that you, Doc?
We can.
Did we, compromise this thing and get it rolling to do something less than 7, but not as short as 1 year, and move this thing along? Also, I want to add this. No one said this yet, but we need to be real frank about this. We need customers.
Yeah.
So, while we're allowing people to continue, whether you're polluting or not, whether you just paid a ton of money, and we should have empathy for that. We do need you to hook up to the system, or we will fail. And I know Tommy, he's nodding his head over there, is not going to be happy because we're not going to have the money in the budget, and we'll be worse than ACUD and so forth. So, you want that in the form of a motion, or?
No, not necessarily.
Okay, but let's keep discussing.
Appreciate your candor. Just continue, I'm gonna call on Mr. Todd Lambert, but I think O'Neill made a good point, is our legal, is that we're gonna get into ditches. What we want is a basic, we continue to amend, but if we gotta feel comfortable, everybody gotta feel comfortable with this, so I appreciate everybody's speech. Yes, Mr. Todd Lambert.
I guess my thing, we come in here tonight, starting off with amendments on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a time frame that we have to move on this? I know what's in jeopardy, we have to move forward but even Mr. Benny has a bunch of amendments, and he's involved in actually writing this, and there's a lot of touchy issues right here now, and I just was wondering on the time frame. We have to move on it tonight to move forward with the loan or with the getting started in the sewer business?
You can't move forward without an ordinance.
That's correct, but.
So we have to have an ordinance. Now, I'm gonna go back to.
Can we wait 2 weeks and kind of finalize all this stuff? Because we got a bunch of stuff that's amended that nobody, it's quite a bit. We came up front with amendments, Seemed like we'd have got that before the meeting if we knew we needed that many amendments, Benny.
Well, the problem with that is that I didn't get this until a couple of days ago, and so started working on it with the attorney to figure out if the questions were, were viable and something that we really wanted to look at. And I mean, we even started talking about some of them tonight. And while I agree with you, there's a few amendments out there. I don't think they're that complicated that would make it that big of an issue to where we need to postpone it. I think we're kind of talking the same language with this deal as far as the connection situation. So I mean, do we absolutely have to pass it tonight? No. Do we want to? I would say yes. And because I mean, we've had this thing for 6 weeks now, which is probably longer than any other ordinance we've had out there since I've been on the council. And just out of the sheer amount of work and stuff that we've done to it, and I want to make sure that it's not as that it's not confusing to everybody as much as possible. But at the end of the day, we need the ordinance. And I mean, if we want to, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think if we just took this 18-117.4 out and made it as an addendum that would come through the administration and then back through us as a council, it wouldn't preclude the ordinance, and we could go ahead and adopt the ordinance based on it without that, and then have this as an addendum which could address it, and we can address this particular issue later on to make sure that we've got it to where it's acceptable to most or majority, if not all, of the folks on the council. I don't see an issue with that. I think what Councilman Lower is proposing is pretty close to what I'm after. Or what I was initially envisioning with some of this, and some of the language Councilman Sadler had there in the last discussion we had. That's why I think if we would take this one particular section out and go back to the committee level and get other recommendations and try to finalize something as far as an addendum to the ordinance, because I think what may happen with that too as well is this may change, or eventually one day when you don't have any MODADs or septic tanks in the parish, this part of the ordinance could go away. And so, or this part of it would actually go away. Now, we may talk, look, it's not tomorrow, it's going to be 40, 50, 60 years from now, but eventually maybe this part of it may go away. And that's just food for thought. So, I mean, if we want to withdraw that motion, I'll make or substitute it with withdrawing this, and as long as Mr. Johnson don't have a.
Yes.
I just,
Okay, you want to go?
yeah, I just want to speak for a second, and ask, Mr. Lower, if you feel good about that, would you and Ms. Cazzo withdraw your motion in a second, and we could let Mr. Johnson
Yeah.
amend his original motion?
So, I just want to be clear, is it 114 and 117.4 about the mandatory connections, or the time frame, or is it also the mandatory and 117.4 where it says, basically all the language about mandatory connections?
Well, the
18.117.4 about the time frame, and I guess that's it, huh?
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
that
it?
whole
I
paragraph.
was going to ask the attorney, is that,
No,
would that?
you take away the sentence, the last sentence in 18.117.4 that talks about the deferral of fees in order to catch people up, because you would
Right.
be handling that separately. But the
Yeah,
first part of it is setting the rates. That would stay in there.
Right, yeah, that's true. Okay, so you would leave the sentence, the authorized utility district by resolution shall set sewage and wastewater service rates. Rates shall be posted on the parish website, and then everything after that would be excluded
Correct,
or taken out.
correct.
But there's still 18.117.1 where it says you have 60 days, right, to connect? Page 9,
Yeah,
is that different?
yeah, no, that's in there. But basically, that says that it's only supposed to be doing after 60 days after date of official notice to do so.
Okay.
And you're control the official notice, because you're not going to issue any notice to anybody. And so basically, there's nothing to connect to.
Yeah.
And so at
Okay,
60,
then I'll withdraw my motion per Councilman Johnson's suggestion about coming back with some of these more specifics around the, the new connections, the graduated recouping and the investment. I think we're pretty close, just having some little sidebars here. I think it's something we can get
So
done.
Mr. Lower withdrew his motion.
Yeah.
I'll withdraw my second.
Ms. Cazzo withdraws her second. Mr. Johnson, you want to add a line, amend your original motion?
Yeah, I want to add to the amendment to, let me find it again, under 18-117.4, to eliminate the following: fees for sewage service shall be deferred for no more than 12 months and no less than 6 months for any residential property connected to the public sanitary sewer within 12 months of the owner's installation of a permitted individual sewer system for such property.
And that sentence will be removed.
Yes.
And anything regarding that will be taken up in an addendum.
As an addendum, yes, sir.
Any more discussion?
Yes, I did.
Yes, Mr. Shake Snyder.
Y'all wanted to prolong discussion?
Hey, I put aside tonight to come here. I got till tomorrow morning at 6:30. I'm good.
I took vacations.
We have taken in a couple systems already in Hilliardale and Darrah. They were required to hook up. So we do have a track record of this.
Yeah.
There wasn't any exceptions to my knowledge. And It wasn't an easy decision to sit around that area. It wasn't my district, but I live right next to it, and I know the people involved, and so, but they bit the bullet, and they have sewer right now. You know, we're, a number of other people and councilmen in this parish have that this beginning of this sewer system could go in, would be tickle pink to get an opportunity to get $60 million spent in their district to get the sewer out so we could walk on the streets of our subdivision or our streets without stinking in the afternoon. So if there's a negative point into moving forward over here, I would volunteer to have our area and follow the guidelines, but I think we can follow through and work forward, and hopefully we can get this done and move forward with this, because this is a big issue. And it's not an easy decision. It's, in 1993, they almost did it, and the council didn't follow through. In 1998, they were going to start a plan, $180 million. They didn't follow through. In 2003, they didn't follow through, and when we had another opportunity before, and we didn't follow through. And if we don't have the will to make this hard decision right now, it's going to be very, very easy to just fall apart, and all the work that has been done. 10 years from now, they're going to say, boy, you know, we had an opportunity in 2014 to pass this thing. So the most important thing we have to do is get past this and work out things we need to work out from here. So I have all the confidence in the world that we have people that can do this. And but we do have a track record. We do have a track record on the West Bank. We do have a track record in Darren-Hillville and some other systems. And you know, we've had people that have done this. So you know, I feel confident we can move forward.
Thank you, sir. Any other comment?
Madam President.
Yes, Mr. President.
I just also want to say this is not an easy decision, and I agree with a couple of things that Oliver said. This is the opportunity, if you're going to move forward with. But there's issues also to make the budget balance of all the systems that we talked about tonight. None of them break even. We subsidizing all those systems. So when you start talking about exceptions, then you start talking about a loss of customers, a loss of revenue. To make this thing work, tonight's the first step. We passed an ordinance. But to make it work, we got to sit down and put customers and numbers to the plan. You know, you can't go and build a huge sewer plant and put big pipe in the ground and have 25 customers. I mean, that's happened in some other communities just to say we had sewer. So, I mean, but we are constantly working on those things. We've been working with the existing wastewater providers here. They know that their time is short over the period of time when EPA changes the rules and regulations. Is there, Todd, is there the time frame on this? DQ's been very patient with us for the last 3 years as far as the money. We know at this point, and I can tell you at this point, we're going to have to do this thing in 2 phases. It's going to have to be a $30 million and a $30 million project over time. So they're okay with that. We've talked to DQ. They're fine with it. Main goal we got and the main challenge that we have now is to get customers. Because it was like ACUD number 1. They based all their facts and figures on 1,100 customers. Basically, what happened, they ended up with 700 customers. And that's where the shortfall ended up with water. I mean, if they had 1,100 customers, ACUD 1 would be making money today. They don't have 1,100. They got 700. We're trying to build that. We're making some contracts with, hopefully with CF in the near future, and there's some new subdivisions that are going to be building here on the West Bank, and hopefully that we can offset that and break even at some point. But we should be making money with water. Maybe at some point it'll happen. But I don't know a whole lot of sewer systems that make money. I don't know a whole lot of them that break even. So once you get in it, you're going to be in it for the long haul. And it's a scary thought, so it's a tough decision. I mean, I'm not going to sit up here and tell you something that you go in this and you put $60 million in the ground that you're gonna break even. You're going to probably be subsidizing for a while. And the reason we're saying that is because all these other systems are losing money at this point. Now, that we got 5 systems that we up the rates, but we still losing a lot of money every year on. I can't tell you an exact figure at this point. So, yes, the rates are going to continually go up. It's not going to be something that will be funded just by user fees. At some point in time, it's going to be have to have some other money that's going to have to be an influx of other money. So, you know, it's a tough decision, and I've been sitting here and debating sewer for 21 years, okay? And I've heard all the excuses why not to do it, and I've heard several excuses why to do it. But I still say it's a really tough decision that you have to think about. And, you know, I think that everybody's done a good job of doing what they're supposed to do. Benny's done an excellent job over the past couple of years and come up with a plan. But still in our plan, we still have to have customers. And I don't think Benny and myself or anybody's going to say, hey, we're going to go jump up and build a sewer system without any customers. So we're working on that. I don't think anybody wants to do that. But the first step is to get through this ordinance. That doesn't say that we're going to end up going and borrow the money. DEQ is going to allow us to borrow it if we don't have any customers. So, and that, I mean, that's what we've been steadily working at, and we know that. So that's all I have to say. But I respect your decisions here tonight, and I know it's going to be a tough one. And you know, we've been through it before, and so it's an opportunity. But also remember that it's not going to be a rewarding opportunity down the line for at least the first few years over the next 20 years.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Mr. Johnson.
I would like to take this opportunity to express my appreciation to everyone on this council for having the faith in me, putting me in the leadership role of the Utilities Committee and working with me. It's not as far as trying to address this issue. The committee has worked very hard to try to come up with solutions and ideas on how we can approach this that is can get some kind of a consensus not only through this body but through the administration, the public. I also want to thank the administration, President Martinez and Mr. Dawson, for working, as well as the engineering group and everybody in the utilities department, everybody involved. As I've said before, this is a dynamic issue that has many items that has to be considered. Some of them all at once, some of them won't, you know, have to go in series depending on what decisions you make. As was stated here earlier tonight, this is one of many tough decisions that this body will have to make into the future as to whether or not you even get into the sewer business. One of the things President Martinez alluded to is customers. The numbers that I've learned here in the last 6-7 months is it takes about 10,000 customers for a system to break even. We're nowhere near that. You can't build a system today to cover every 70-80% of the parish that is economically feasible to cover on the East Bank and have it operate without customers. You can't build a system with the money that we afford today and not go back and have to rebuild some of that later on with more customers come into place. So there's going to be compromises that have to be made along the lines to get this thing done. And working with the private utility companies as well as other folks, we are trying to come up with what we believe the best thing forward and have something solid before we move forward to the Utilities Committee, so we have some basis for making decisions on without just throwing up a whole bunch of what-ifs. And so I appreciate your patience on dealing with this type of things. It's not anything that it's me trying to get something accomplished or the administration trying to do something on our own to get some kind of stuff forced through or what have you. It's just a matter that this situation is bigger than what I ever envisioned when we started looking at it and what we started to do 2.5, 3 years ago with the Utilities Committee when I took over. And so if you've got questions, if you've got concerns, please call me. I'll tell you what I know, I'll tell you what I don't know, and we'll try to work through there and tell you what we're working on. And from that point, with this particular ordinance, again, thanks for the work and trying to make it as best as it could be and going on from there. And all these other things that are addendums that we talked about tonight will be brought forth, and you will have, whether it be as ACUD 2 or ACUD 1 or the council as a whole, have opportunities for input and ultimately a decision be made on it. All I ask is that as these items are brought forward, please review them. Please let us know as soon as possible or as early as you can concerns that you may have, so we can address them in meetings, so we don't eat up too much time going back and forth with these things. It's not, in a lot of cases, some of it's not urgent, but it's just working and reworking, so forth and so on with those type of issues that I want everybody to be comfortable with what we're doing. And the more information we have ahead of time, the earlier we get that information, hopefully we can answer it. We can come up with specific things to make these things as good as possible before we even bring them to this body. And so again, thanks for everything and working with this, and look forward to continuing to work in the future.
Thank you, Benny. Any other discussion? Doc.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Moments ago, Benny said that all this fell upon him just a few days ago. That's true, and I want him to know, and everybody, he was being very professional by not saying who put that on him. If it isn't obvious by now, mea culpa. I did send an email 2 days ago, but I want to read the last sentence of that email because there's some irony here. It says this, quote, "Considering the amount," and we've been debating this for an hour, "the complexity and the unaddressed issues identified in my comments above," and I realize everybody doesn't have this, but there's about 2.5, 3 pages of that, comments. "I recommend pulling this item from the agenda on Thursday night until these," meaning my comments, and I'm sure many others, other councilmen, their comments have been adequately addressed. Moments ago, Todd Lambert tells us that we might want to consider that. In Chambers, I know Ms. Casso expressed that concern. I got to admit, however, while I authored that, I wasn't part of the thread that went to the attorney, but I did get to see it in Chambers, and looked like, as I said, things were being adequately addressed there. But I just bring this up because I think in the future we really need to consider, unless there's an absolute breakneck reason to proceed, especially on something as important as this, what's wrong with putting it off, not indefinitely, so you're not going to get back to 1993, Mr. President, to today, but one more time to try to get it as right as we possibly can. I'm not going to fight moving this afternoon. Frankly, I'm so invested into a sewer system as to be incredible. My fingerprints are all over it for sure. I want to see it happen, and I'll do anything reasonable to see that it happens. But think about that quote, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes we just need and I mentioned Terry and Todd. Let me add Brian to it. I mean, he brought up a point tonight that I hadn't thought about either, and it's in the back of my mind right now, and I'm not sure we even addressed it. But if it's the will of this commission, or this council, to proceed tonight based on the amended whatever, and Chris, if you're happy dropping your thing out, and Terry, you're happy dropping your thing out, like I say, I'm not going to fight that, but please, let's try in the future, let's take a little deeper breath, and if we need to pull something, let's pull it. And one more thing. Yes, I did do that 2 days ago, and certainly I'm on the committee, and I'd had time beyond that, but this is, I think O'Neill said, a working document even after we do it. Well, it's working on me every day. And the request from Mr. Johnson, I think to all of us, came over the weekend, in fairness, to any final comments. And that's sort of like the wedding vow thing, speak now, forever hold your peace. And my wife had a lot to do with that. The Louisiana Fall Festival show this weekend. In a support role, I had to go for our show Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so I didn't get to play councilman again until Monday morning, and I worked as hard as I can to get this to him, and I don't think he even got it to Tuesday at 12 noon, but I didn't learn till over the weekend, and we have lives too, so next time, I promise I'll do better and try to think about things earlier and whatever, but I hope the rest of this council makes a real good effort, because there's irony in these words. Amount, complexity, and unaddressed issues. Let's pull it. It's probably what we should have done. Thanks for listening.
Any other discussion? Any opposition? We have an opposition. Mr. Brian Lawson. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Councilwoman Terry Casso, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilman Benny Johnson.
Yes.
Councilman Oliver Joseph.
Yes.
Councilman Todd Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman Chris Lohr.
Yes.
Councilman Brian Melanson.
No.
Councilman Daniel Satterley.
Reluctantly, yes.
Councilman Ken Shake Snyder.
Yes.
Councilman Travis Turner.
The yes has it. The ordinance has passed. Before we move on to agenda item number 31 with Mr. Todd Lambert, I want to thank everybody. As chair, I thank you guys for your deliberation. Thank you for your opinions. Thank you for representing people, bringing out points. And just some good conversation. Could have went on. We could have went on a couple more hours. I'm good with it. Thank everybody.
Motion to adjourn, Mr.
Motion
Chairman.
adjourned by Mr. Todd Lambert. We need a second by Mr. Benny Johnson. Any opposition? We are adjourned.